Hello, Dr. Taz and Julie. Welcome to Age Better.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thrilled to
So
be
I'm really
here.
excited about this because you are co-hosting a really incredible limited run show. So you're going to tell us all about that, called the Midlife Truth Project. So I want to know about it. My audience wants to know about it. Why did you start it? What's it all about? And what made you say, hey, midlife, this is kind of crazy. I need more information. We should do this. Tell us.
Well, I will start by saying that my transition into midlife was definitely less than smooth. To be very honest, it was very rocky. And similar to your story, which you shared with me before we started, I was around 46 and nothing felt quite right for me, physically, emotionally, even spiritually. And just to kind of take a pause there to explain really what was going on with me, I felt physically, I just felt off, right? And I didn't know, this was 7 years ago, and I didn't know anything about perimenopause or menopause. And so I was suffering from insomnia. I was living every other week in the guest room, popping a Xanax or whatever else I could get my hands on. I was going through chronic bouts of UTIs and taking antibiotics like candy, and then had the resulting yeast infections. And I mean, I hate to say TMI, but I think it's important for listeners to know. I mean, I was in so much pain at one point. I had a Ziploc of ice cubes on my privates. I mean, it was bad. And I had a doctor, my primary care physician, who was telling me, "Oh, honey, it's just honeymoon sex. You just need to have more sex." And it was so, I mean, talking about feeling gaslit in the moment, that is not what I needed to hear. And then there was a myriad of other changes that were happening for me. Professionally, I was feeling some shame around being 46 and feeling like my career looked more like an EKG rather than a hockey stick. And there was a lot of should've, would've, could've, and shame around that. I had an ache of really seeing my children need me less. And that was not something I was expecting. And, all of this led me to feel quite alone. And that was another shift for me, is that when I was looking for, how can I share this? How can I share my feelings? How can I be vulnerable? I felt suddenly that I didn't know who really were my real friends. My friendships had been evolving for over, several years as my kids aged up and as I had moved to different jobs. And so I started questioning those friendships. And so all of this led me to feel very alone. And that is what prompted this kind of quest for me. I spent, 3 years probably, and that's a whole episode unto itself, how I got myself back to shore after these waves were crashing over me. And I started the original Midlife Truth Project, which was a platform and initiative to better understand what women were thinking and feeling as they settled into midlife. So I interviewed over 100 women between the ages of 45 and 57 about their experiences. And guess what? Spoiler, I was definitely not alone. And then I decided that I needed to amplify this. I needed to create more of a guidebook, more of a what to expect when you're expecting for midlife. And I didn't want to do it alone. And so I literally ran into the universe, had me meet Dr. Taz. And I wanted to align myself with someone who thought about midlife holistically. And I'm going to let her talk a little bit more about her background and why she's the perfect co-host for this conversation. So I wanted the two of us to talk holistically about not only what was happening to us physically in conjunction with perimenopause and menopause, but the myriad of shifts that happen as we transition and settle into midlife. So I asked her if she wanted to, I stalked her, to be quite honest. Can be quite a bulldog.
Good stalker.
Here. I can understand, Julie, why you were stalking her, actually.
She's amazing. Yeah. And she will share with you that story. And so she, despite having her own podcast for 7 years and being a celebrated doctor in the integrative health movement, she said yes. And I think, and that's really where this started. It is an effort to help women feel less alone and more empowered to take charge of this unique chapter in their lives. It is 10 episodes that really is a playbook for midlife.
Dr. Taz, before we hear your story and why you decided to do this with Julie, just tell us, so how can people see it? How can they watch it? And when?
Thank you for asking. We are on all podcast platforms called The Midlife Truth Project. All the episodes are live. Actually, we're dropping episode 10 next week. And you can find them on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, as well as on YouTube. Again, the name is The Midlife Truth Project. And I would also say, definitely follow us on social. I'm Julie Flakstad, Flakstad.
I'm Julie and Dr. Taz. I'm going to have all of those in the show notes, information to get to the show itself, as well as more about it, more about each of you, and how to follow you both on social media, which I think is really, really important because you share a lot of really good information. Dr. Taz, tell us about this. So what made you say, all right, Julie, I'm going to do this with you?
Well, she is persistent, but no, I mean, I think
stalking works, huh?
Stalking works, you never, who would have thought? But, I don't know. I think that I have watched people struggle is probably the simplest way to say it. And I've watched them struggle in the exam room. I've been privileged and honored to sit with them as they've gone through major life transitions, whether those transitions are purely physical, right? Like they are now in perimenopause or menopause, or they've lost their sex drive, or they can't sleep, or they're foggy. Like, they're those transitions. But then there are also the really tough, heart-wrenching transitions, right? Where children are leaving the home. They may have lost a child. They may have lost a spouse. They may be divorced. They may have lost a job. They may have lost a company. They may have gained something. So
aging parents, I want to stick in there as well.
Oh my gosh, that's a big one. How could I forget that one? That's a huge one that has been something. So, when you sit in these rooms and you talk to people over and over again, you realize very quickly that, many people feel alone. I think that's the first issue. Many people think that they are the problem, and that, something's wrong with them, that they are not able to navigate all of these transitions. You just talked about social media, as beautifully as social media seems to portray that everybody is. And, I just realized that there's more to be done. I've always realized that, to be honest, but I just felt like this was such an opportunity to move this conversation out of me and a patient out into a broader, audience, and in a way and in an opportunity where we could unpack it a little bit more. And, because patients feel bad when they're sitting there telling me about whatever else is happening that's non-medical, right? Because I wear the title of doctor. So they think they need to be limited to a very physical, chemistry-based, laboratory-based conversation. Whereas, I see doctor as something different. And this was an opportunity to sort of exercise those skills and to really bring this conversation out of the exam room, out into the open, and just help everybody understand that this is a transition that should be celebrated if we can kind of get the right tools in place and the right community in place at the same time.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And it just reminded me of something I heard just last night when I was on a flight and from New York. And it was Dr. Vonda Wright. And she was actually on Dr. Gabrielle Lyons' podcast.
Yeah.
And she said that exact thing because Dr. Vonda Wright, who has been a guest on my show, she's terrific. And she was talking about how, she's an orthopedic surgeon. And so people would come to her with a specific orthopedic issue, like a knee issue.
Right.
But she would then want to expand the conversation holistically to talk about, well, what else is going on with you? What else is happening in your life? What else is happening to you physically, like menopause, for example? So it's a wonderful thing. And there aren't enough doctors, I think you probably know this, out there in the world who take this approach. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And there's not the, I always kind of want to stick up for doctors. There's not the opportunity.
No, I know. There's not.
Model, right, to be that advocate and to be that person. So those of us that have kind of ventured into that space, we're not, we're few and far between right now, but we intend to change it. For sure.
I just want to add one thing to that.
Yeah,
please.
I've so appreciated in the podcast, I think it was episode 3 on what You're Not Crazy, It's Hormones, which was our conversation with Dr. Sharon Malone on perimenopause and menopause. You said something that was, I think, so important for women to hear, which is, despite the fact that the medical system is largely broken, right? We don't have enough time with our doctors. Our doctors aren't necessarily educated enough on particularly perimenopause and menopause, but we do have tools out there to become our own quarterback. And like your book, The Hormone Shift, and the books of many of the people that we have interviewed, and as you have interviewed as well, and podcasts. and other resources we have to educate ourselves so we can become a better advocate for ourselves in those conversations with doctors. And the other thing that we mentioned in that episode, which I think is a really good takeaway for women, is to, outside of your regularly scheduled appointment, book a wellness visit. And so you have that extra time outside of your pap smear or your regularly scheduled exam, like tests that you have to take. Anyway, I think that's important.
I think that's really, really good advice. And, you know, I often have on as a guest when we talk specifically about menopause-related topics and issues, and that's Dr. Margaret Noctegal, and she is my partner in Menopause Cheat Sheet newsletter as well. And so whenever she's on, she never leaves the recording without saying, all of this is so personal. It's all you're all individuals. It's so personalized. So yeah, we can talk some blanket statements, but it's really personal, and you have to make sure that you have that kind of conversation with your trusted healthcare provider. And the other thing is that find a trusted healthcare provider who can be your true partner. And if you don't have that, or if you feel like you're being, you know, poo-pooed with your symptoms, as so many women still are, find another one.
Correct.
So listen, so you're co-hosting, I mean, you both do a lot of great other things, but now you're co-hosting this really terrific limited run podcast. And I hope that when I get to the question about what's next for you guys with this, we'll hear that there's more coming up. But for now, so you have to be learning a great deal. But when you've had these guests on, and some of the, you know, people you've heard from are real women, not just medical experts, and you must be learning a lot along the way. So, you know, what do you feel that you're learning? What do you think you've been adding to your own kind of toolkit from this?
I mean, I'll start by just saying, you know, leading into this and having had, you know, hundreds of conversations with women, I certainly knew that the transition into midlife was layered. It's nuanced, it's personal. But I think all of that has just been reinforced by the conversations that we've had, because we were so intentional about the sequence of these 10 episodes, starting with the initial ones about opening up and reframing midlife, and then really diving into each of these transitions, whether they're about hormones or about changing family dynamics or evolving friendship. And so taking time to really unpack and unravel each of these, I call them waves, but transitions that hit us as we settle into our 40s and 50s, has allowed me to kind of really reflect on how nuanced and layered, and how at times heavy and hard some of these transitions are. And I think as women, we don't always allow ourselves to say that something is hard, and give ourselves a little bit of grace to be like, wow, this is a lot. So I think that was like a big learning for me. It's just kind of that reinforcement, like it's okay to pause, sit with this, feel it, and then feel more empowered to kind of move on and grow from it.
Right. I think for me, what I found really interesting is that, you know, out of the guest, everyone like dialed into a specific area of this sort of transition, right? Whether it was financial, whether it was friendship, whether it was how to manifest, you know, sex, you know, they really dove into all of these. And I think what I took from all of it is that, you know, there's a toolbox. You know, there is a toolbox. If you have an issue, there is a toolbox. And that toolbox could be, you know, people that have really taken time and energy to explore whatever it is that you're experiencing. But the problem I think we have is that, you know, many of us, I'm a mom, I know Julie's a mom, and we're both, you know, rah-rah moms, always worried about our teenagers and stuff like that. But
you just wait. I have two daughters, 30 years and 26 years old.
And you're still rah-rah, probably.
Totally.
Like, I don't think it ever
even
goes
more,
away.
to be honest, even more.
It doesn't go away. But think about how we mother. Like when we mother, it's all in, you know, like I'm going to research everything. I'm going to do everything. I'm going to, you know, like, you know, to the ends of the earth to figure this stuff out. Right. But when it comes to us, we don't mother or parent ourselves. You know, we don't really stop to be like, okay, well, what do I need? And what do I need to research to figure this out? So I think for me, it's just that reminder of like, okay, you are important in this journey. You know, you're the leader of this journey, whether you're in a family, company, personal, whatever situation, you're the leader of your journey. And
if you're going to lead anything, would you go in it blind? You know, like, would you go in it without being educated and informed and without an army behind you? You wouldn't do that stuff, right? So why do we do it for ourselves? You know, so, you know, what I think I took away is that I hope everyone is slowly building, including myself, you know, the toolbox, the resources, and the army for them. And I'm going to be blatantly honest, you know, we joke about this all the time. I don't know if you follow the Enneagram stuff or any of that stuff, but I'm an 8, and like those are chargers and stuff. And it's my husband and I were actually having this conversation just this morning, and he is too. And when we look back, like at our, like how we've done different things, right? Built businesses and a family and all this other stuff. Like, why didn't we ask for help? Like, why didn't we dig into a toolbox of some kind? Why did we were we that full of ourselves that we thought we could power through and figure this out? But like, you know, that mentality kind of carries in through this transition too, that like, oh, I've got this. Like, I'm not going to let anybody else like look in and see what's going on, you know, that type of thing. And I think that's just such a disservice. And I think if anything, like what I took away is there's so many amazing people out there. There's so many amazing resources out there.
Yeah.
Dig in. Roll your sleeves up and dig in. And whether you're an 8 or a 2 on the Enneagram, which is the helper, or a 1, which is a perfectionist, it's irrelevant. Like, we all need each other, you know? And so it's just like, embrace it, bring it in, and then grow from that experience. So I feel like I've grown from the experience.
Well, that's wonderful to hear.
That's a really long way of saying that. Jeez, that's a lot of words. You're off all the 30 minutes right there. So,
oxygen mask on first.
Put your oxygen mask
on the plane first.
Right.
We don't take time as women.
Right.
Pause.
No,
I just want to add one thing to this is I would just implore everybody out there listening, whether you're 45 or 55 or 65, wherever you are, we need to take conscious moments to pause. Everyone, put it in your calendar. Every 3 months, put in an hour-long or a 3-hour-long timestamp where you're going to check in with yourself to say, where am I? What's important to me right now? Am I staying true to me? And what do I want from the next 3 months? It's just a check-in. And this is a period of midlife where you really need to check in.
Check in with yourself, and also with your, what I like to call my kitchen cabinet, you know, where they're my advisors, if you will, also a really, really good tool in my personal toolkit. But one quick story I want to share, and I've shared it quite a few times, actually, but it's one of my favorites because it's really so powerful, is that for my first book, I had the great honor of interviewing Diane von Furstenberg. And during, you know, sure, we talked about style and all that kind of stuff, her starting a company, her entrepreneurship, and so on. But then we got to talking about women and how we view ourselves and midlife. And at that interview, she said to me the following, you know, Barbara, I really, really, really love my husband. I adore him. And oh my gosh, my kids, love them. I mean, they can do no wrong. But wait a minute, my grandkids? Yeah, please. Like, there are no better grandkids than my grandkids.
Of course.
I love them. But, and here's the kicker, but I love myself more.
Wow.
Because I realized, and this was a midlife awakening for her. She didn't think that up until her 50s, or I think actually 60s. It only came to her at that time in midlife. And she goes, oh my gosh, if I don't take care of myself, I won't be able to be there to help them or take care of them. And I love them so much. Why would I want to do that to them? Why would I want to do that to myself? So that is just a powerful message that I think a lot of women haven't gotten yet. But I think for me personally, as I entered midlife, it became much more clear to me. And that's when I started taking action. Like before recording, Julie and I were chatting. That's when I took action. So, and I just hope that women everywhere kind of take those Diane von Furstenberg words and really heed them. So anyway, I do want to, speaking of celebrities, I do want to ask you, so you have, you know, you've talked with quite a few well-known people for your podcast and maybe,
lucky.
You know, outside of the podcast. So who were some of the, you know, most eye-opening conversations? What were some of the most eye-opening conversations you had with some of your, you know, the bigger names, if you will?
Well, I
liked I know Sarah Blakely, but I didn't realize, and it came out in the conversation, that we had on the podcast, I didn't realize how sort of she had such a system, is the word I'm looking for. She has such a system and a practice of trying to tap into what it is the universe wanted her to do. She's not an entrepreneur like, okay, let me draw spreadsheets and let me have 1 million Excel sheets and all that other stuff. That's not it. It's more like, what am I here to do? What does the universe want me to do? How do I go about doing that? Like, she has a system for,
and show me,
and show me a sign, and that just struck me, so strongly, because I adore her and I think she's amazing and she's doing she has, and she'll continue to do amazing things.
Yes.
So like that thing that we talk about all the time, like manifest, write things down, have a vision board, do this and do that. People really do it and bring it to life, and you can do it too and bring your dreams to life. And I think that is the thing that, really struck me in that particular conversation. I don't know.
What about you, Julie?
So, I mean, look, I again, in the spirit of intentionality, when after these hundreds of interviews I had with women, when I culled down these midlife truths, I was very intentional about very many of the guests that I wanted, like who was the number one guest that I wanted. And I had researched these guests thoroughly. And so I can't say I was, utterly surprised by any one particular, but I would say that I was struck by several of them. I would say there's so many.
You can name drop.
Okay. Well, I would say, for me, I thought Chip Conley was really...
He's been a guest on my show. He was very amazing, actually.
I was struck by his entire life story and how it really has been about following the breadcrumbs and connecting the dots for him.
Yes.
And how intentional he has been. And that he's really... Talk about going from the operating system to the ego to the soul as an operating system. He talks about that. And his real leaning into living, walking the walk and talking the talk in terms of being that, passionate advocate for aging. And so I was just really, I would say, enamored by all of his analogies and his thoughtfulness about this period of life. So, and he is, in my opinion, one of the biggest thought leaders on aging right now. And so we both really want to go to the Modern Elder Academy. Yeah.
So do I. Maybe we should figure out
do it together
at the same time.
Yeah,
I mean, because he has said, Barbara, you've got to come. And I said, yeah, I really do.
And I would be remiss if I didn't look. I mean, I could talk about all of them, but I would just do a little name drop. The other one that really springs to mind is Dr. Kelly Casperson too.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and based on my work that I have done, is that sex is one of the most vulnerable issues for women, or themes as we age. Sex and intimacy. I always talk to them, together, because sex isn't always about penetration, right? Sex and intimacy. It's a broader conversation. And I think that she is just unbelievable at her ability to be so approachable and like the doctor meets girl next door, and how to give people tangible tips about, how do we approach our anatomy? How do we approach our partner or spouse in these difficult conversations? And how do we lean into sex and intimacy as fun and play? So I loved her.
Yeah, she's incredible and so approachable. And you're right, girl next door doctor, and really makes you feel so much better about yourself, and relays information in such a way that's just so understandable, right?
Yeah. I mean, your platform,
like, it's not too complicated. She uncomplicates things.
Again, we could talk about all of our guests.
They're all amazing.
Oh, yeah, they're all amazing. And your show is amazing. And so, again, I'm encouraging everyone to take the time to listen to the episode, starting with the first one, work your way through. And then, of course, we all look forward to number 10, which will be dropping soon. But you do cover a lot of topics, a lot of different topics: menopause, perimenopause, finance, sex, health and wellness, and everything in between. I mean, that's what life is. I mean, life is all of that and so much more. And you cover it, which is really great. In just a few episodes, they're very, very impressive. Well done. Yay.
Thank you. Well, that's the holistic approach,
Which
right?
do you feel
you want that
based on...
rounded approach for sure, So
But based on feedback that you have gotten,
Mm.
which topics do you feel are most relevant to your audience? Women in their 40s and 50s and 60s, and which do have really resonated with them?
Well, I'm going to switch that. I'm going to switch it a little bit around, because what I found most fascinating was the feedback that I got from people about topics where they weren't expecting to be as touched or stirred up emotionally as they were. So people have reached out to me on social media. They've reached out, if they know me to any certain extent, via DM or text or whatever. And I would say that friendship is one that really got people choked up. And because they recognize that in this world or the business of busy, that many of them have not been as intentional about friendship as they really recognize that they need to be at this intersection of life. Because as we age, the midlife truth is that friendship matters, right? That's the name of the episode. And so really being intentional about friendship, taking inventory of our friendships, and learning how to have harder conversations with people we care about, and recognizing that friendship can be as intimate, whether it's platonic or romantic. And so that was one episode that I got a lot of hearts going thumpity thump.
Oh, that's actually very sweet. And it is important. Of course, friendship does matter. And we also know that friendships evolve over the years. And Dr. Taz, anything you want to add to that?
Well, I was going to say, it's been interesting with the series. I think a lot of times people come into it the way they come into the exam room, right? Like, I want to solve this issue around sex, or I want to solve this issue around, my hormones. Do I do HRT or do I not do HRT? Those very simplistic questions. And I think what they find after listening is that same thing, like what you were saying earlier, that it needs to be personalized, it needs to be individualized, but there are options. At the end of the day, there are options, no matter who you are, So I think that has truly resonated with a lot of people for sure, is that idea that their physical health, and this might be selfish, but I'm hoping that what they're understanding is that as they get into this conversation around physical health, and as they are trying to solve that part of the puzzle, they are having the bandwidth and the energy to solve the other pieces of what we consider healthy, right? So that they're able to now be financially healthy, now able to have a healthy relationship, now able to foster a friendship, now able to think about family in a broader context, build community, all those other ideas. So that's always my hope when I'm seeing them, and it's my hope in the podcast, but that is actually what I'm hearing. So I think that's been exciting, that again, they're coming in with a need, but they're coming out with like, oh, there's more to this story, So I think that's exciting.
So you're opening up their minds actually to other, ideas and possibilities.
Definitely.
And also talking about, you mentioned the word community just now. A community. Do you feel that your podcast is fostering a sense of community among women? And how are you helping to kind of encourage that community? Or how are you building this community?
Well, I think we're in the early days of community building, because this is our first out of the gate thing, but both of us have been building community sort of separately anyways, right? So I think, yes, we're on social and we're collaborating and posting and talking about it there for sure. But we just had this amazing event last night, at Casa Cipriani, which actually pulled together in 2 weeks, and the room was full. So something's resonating, for sure. And so I think there's just a lot more to come. Like I haven't talked to you about this, but I personally see like a series of events, like coming up, as a way for women to meet up as they are listening to these episodes and then coming together in some form or fashion. But I don't know what thoughts you have.
No, echo as usual. I echo what you say, because we are very much in sync. For community for this project is really about female truth. It is really my message to everyone is lead by example, be vulnerable, say things, open yourself up, lead with truth and vulnerability in your conversations, whether it's with your partner, your spouse, your children, your friends, your professionally, with yourself, be honest with yourself, say things out loud, ask yourself, what do I want? Who am I today? And where am I going? So you can really begin to architect what these next chapters look like.
And so community is how it is really about, sharing that truth. And to Taz's point, I think one thing is obviously social media and continuing to share with each other, through posts and through engagement about what it is you're feeling and what is resonating that you're hearing in the episodes or beyond. But I really do believe in face-to-face connection. I think in a post-COVID world, the amount of sitting next to Taz, just to be able to touch her, and to feel other people's vibration and to sense, like yesterday we had a sharing at the event where people, shared what was something about midlife that surprised them most, and our end share was what was something that you feel you're looking for more growth in midlife.
Yeah, wonderful.
And I think it's being in community and face-to-face real life events. And I would love to be able to use the Midlife Truth as a platform to gather women and share medical, holistic viewpoints, lifestyle, all the like.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful goal. And I hope that you achieve that goal because I think that's exactly what is needed. So, Julie, before we recorded, I was telling you my backstory about why I even decided to write my first book. And in 2010 is when it came out, the first one. And it's because at that time, and Dr. Taz, this is like kind of crazy to think about when I look back, but at that time, I was a lone voice in the wilderness because I was talking about positive aging. I was talking about, no, embrace your age, love your age, just like be the best, whatever age you are, and do everything you can that's in your control. And that was kind of the overall simple message. Whereas at that time, it was still anti-aging. It was still, don't age, fight aging.
Stop it.
And, and this was before Michelle Lee, the editor-in-chief then of Allure magazine, banned anti-aging references in her magazine. And, of course, other media followed suit shortly thereafter. This is, I don't know how many years ago now, 7, something like that. But do you see my point? So I have seen personally not a whole big shift, but I have seen a nice evolution, a nice hum in the right direction of accepting aging, of embracing aging. And of course, I think this whole thing with menopause exploding in the last 3 to 4 years, right, with all the voices that are in that space has really helped because obviously menopause and midlife are kind of like this. And so that's been really, really great. So what do you two think? Do you see, since you started to think about midlife, have you seen a positive evolution?
Within ourselves or our community? Or both?
In society.
In society.
I mean, yeah, how it's viewed. And then you can answer any way you like. I was thinking more about society.
About society.
Media and people and how they view aging.
We're always connected. I can see where you're going. I was so there. Say it.
I just don't think we're there yet. Is that what you were thinking?
No.
I just don't think we're there yet.
No sea change here.
I still think there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of I'm going to hide or purposely being hidden.
I'm
don't
not
think
sexy anymore. I don't look good anymore. I'm not valuable. I could go on and on. The things that we have collectively, the three of us, heard.
Or been told.
Yeah.
Or been told.
Yeah. I just don't think we're there
so
yet.
I think that, collectively and many, 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 many of our peers are working very hard to counter all of that. And we have a long way to go. So I guess that was really what I was looking to hear. Like, you didn't think, oh, yay, we're there. No, we're not.
I will say, I think that in one of the conversations we've had is the starting point is starting to obviously talk about it and finding comfort in talking about it with each other. And so even getting women in a room together or on social platforms or whatever to begin to start the conversation. And that's why I love this very approachable 10-part series, this podcast series, is that I can see people already, saying, oh, you feel that way. People feel alone. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Is that people feel like they're in a box and they don't feel like they can connect on whether sex is complicated or the ache of learning to let go of their children, or I feel stuck. I don't know what's next, and so having these opening up the conversations helps people feel less alone. That's step number 1. And I've always said to people is if you can say something out loud or at least write it down, it gets it off your heart or off your head and out so you can look at it.
And I think that's really the first step. But we have a long way to go.
We have a long way to go. Yeah. So the Midlife Truth Project. Yay. So glad that you're doing it.
Yeah, thank you.
Will you continue to do it? What's next? Can you give us a little hint? Is there something next? Are you working on some other ideas, some other projects?
I will say that you'll be the first. Well, we talked a little bit about it, but right here on your podcast, we are absolutely gearing up for a season 2 that will launch sometime in 2025. But I'm going to be, and I know Taz and I have talked about this, and we're very specific. We're not going to just produce something to produce something. This is not about, having episode, whatever number attached to it. Although I really enjoy podcasts like yours, where there's a constant stream of information and valuable content. It's like a news show you just dial into. For us, I think we really want to highly architect and produce a series of conversations that are grounded in a storytelling. And so that people there's a beginning, middle, and end. So that season 2 will have the same format. It'll be a very capsuled program, limited series with people who are really celebrated thought leaders, advocates, experts in whatever truth we're talking about. Because at the end of the day, this is about amplifying female truth.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And
Dr. Taz, you want to add to that at all?
I mean, I think she nailed it. I just think you nailed it. There's work to do. I think we want to recognize that and to grow this community further, and really provide some tools for everyone to use, for generations to come, and maybe be those disruptors of culture, right? Like, kind of lean on the shoulders of the people before us and continue to drive that change. So I'm looking forward to another season if it happens, and sometimes it might morph into other projects too, but definitely looking forward to whatever the journey brings.
Yes, thank you for that. And this was a wonderful conversation. And before I let you go, I always like to ask my guests, what are the top 3 takeaways that you'd really like the Age Better audience to remember from this conversation today? You can either each do 3, one does 2, one does whatever you like. Give us a few takeaways.
Go for it. That there is a playbook for midlife that is grounded in truth. And we've tried to highlight those in these 10 episodes.
Mine is to find alignment, because when you find alignment, you're no longer trapped. So find your purpose, find your passion. You're not old. It's not too late. Every day is an opportunity.
Well, and one to make it 3.
Yeah.
We can't control getting older, but we can control how we do it.
Amazing. That's beautiful. It's a great way to end.
Thank you
and I
so
just thank
much.
you.
Oh,
for
you want to add something?
Right. No, I just want to say thank you for the work that you're doing. And
thank you.
It is really nice to see such a powerful voice out there continuing to beat the drum, at all transitions in life. So thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you both on. And I look forward to you coming back again, talking about season 2.
Oh, I love it.
Whatever else you're going to do. Thank you both.
All right. Good stuff.
Soon. Bye.
Talk